Business Advantage Incorporated, Brian Tracy, their agents and representatives do not render any legal or professional advice. This video should not be used as a substitute for professional services. If legal or professional advice is needed, please consult with your attorney or professional advisor. Welcome to the Business Advantage Incorporated program, How to Talk, Secrets of the Great Communicators. In this presentation, top trainer and consultant Brian Tracy provides his expertise and insight on techniques to ensure peak performance in communication. Please call your Business Advantage Incorporated representative for over 16 programs by Brian Tracy and many other topic areas in training and development.
Hello, I'm Brian Tracy. I've worked with hundreds of companies and thousands of executives and staff in companies in countries all over the world, and I've studied what makes some more successful than others, makes some more effective than others, and I've come to one conclusion. Is your ability to communicate with others will account for fully 85% of your success in business and in life. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your communications. Most of the very best and most effective communicators today were once poor communicators until they learned the methods and techniques that we're going to talk about here. Now here's a question. I was talking to a group of chartered accountants not long ago, and I asked them, I said, how many people here are in sales? And of course there was silence in the room. And then finally one accountant raised his hand, and then another accountant raised his hand, and then both of them put their hands down. I said, oh, really? I said, how many people here are really in sales? And then suddenly it dawned on them that they were all in the business of business development. They were all in the business of interacting and communicating with others. And one by one they raised their hands. You see, the answer is that we're all in sales. Whatever your job or position is, everyone is in sales. You're in sales if you're involved in communicating, influencing, persuading, or negotiating with others. For example, communicating. Do you communicate with other people? Do you talk with other people? Communicating means both understanding and being understood by others. It means both sending and receiving messages. Do you engage in sending and receiving messages during the course of your day, like from the time you get up in the morning until the time you go to bed at night? The only question is whether or not you're a good communicator, not whether or not you do it. And communicating is the foundation or fundamental element of selling. The second part of selling is influencing, which means having an effect on the opinions and behaviors of others, or being an influential person. Now, what does this mean? It means you can either influence others and have an impact in your world, or you can simply be a recipient of influence and be influenced by others. So do you try to influence other people in any way? Even when you're changing lanes and you're putting on your turn signal or waving your hand, you're influencing in some way. The only question is whether or not you are good at influencing others. A third key quality of selling, if you like, is persuading. Do you attempt to persuade others? Persuading means getting others to cooperate with you and getting them to do what you want them to do. Do you attempt to persuade others? How about persuading others to get into the bathroom in the morning, to get into the kitchen, to get into the right lane, to persuade and influence others all day long? Everybody is in the business of persuading. And the fourth part of selling is negotiating, which means getting the very best deals you can for yourself, for your company, for your family. Do you negotiate? Do you negotiate all day long? And again, the only question is whether or not you are any good at it. Are you good at communicating? Are you good at persuading? Are you good at influencing? Are you good at negotiating? And here's the good news, is you can become excellent at selling. You can become excellent at communicating your ideas to others. You can become excellent at influencing others to behave other than they would have if you hadn't influenced them. You can become excellent at persuading others to your point of view and to helping you and working with you and cooperating with you. And you can become excellent at negotiating. All successful men and women in all areas of business are excellent at these four. In fact, in the studies at Harvard, what we found was that interpersonal communications, or what we call social intelligence, is not only a major form of intelligence, but it's the highest paid and most respected intelligence in America, if not the world. And social intelligence is simply the ability to communicate, interact, and to sell your ideas to other people. So, let's get going. The starting point of good communications is to realize that people are motivated for their own reasons, not yours. You see, the average person, the mediocre person, is always thinking about what they want first. But the superior person tunes in to everyone's favorite radio station, which is WII-FM. WII-FM stands for What's in It for Me. The very best communicators and persuaders always start off by thinking, what does the other person want to gain from a situation? So the rule is, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Most people are so concerned about getting the other person to understand them that they are oblivious to where the other person is coming from. But if you reverse the tables and you concentrate on understanding what motivates that person, where they're coming from, how they're thinking and feeling, what their desires are, if you do that, then they will be open to understanding you. Now, if you want to sell your ideas to other people, find out first why they would buy your ideas. Start from their point of view. Go around the table mentally and think, why would they want to cooperate or interact with you? Here's a great technique. Use what is called the lawyer's method. As you know, when a lawyer has to prepare a case to go to court, the lawyer is trained to sit down and argue the case from the other person's point of view. They will sit down and say, what are all the points in favor of this case from the law, from the other person's point of view, from the evidence, from everything that you know. These are all the things that the other person will present to make their case. And only once they've made the other person's case do they begin to think in terms of their own case. I can tell you that this technique takes a little bit of time, but it is amazing how much more clear you are about what you're trying to accomplish and how much more effective you'll be if you argue it through from their point of view in advance. Think in terms of a sales presentation. Now, people say, well, I'm not in selling. As we know, everybody's in selling, and a sales presentation is simply a method of communicating and persuading. So use the AIDA model, the AIDA model. A stands for attention. Remember, people are busy and preoccupied, so if you want to get people's attention, ask a question or make a statement. For example, a question could be, would you like to do much better in this area? Or a statement could be, I have an idea that could help you to be much more effective in this area. In either case, you're tuning in to their station. What's in it for me? What do I get? The second letter in the AIDA formula is I, which means arouse interest by explaining the features and the facts and the details of your idea. Show how your idea would work to achieve the goal that the other person wants. Show how the details and facts come together. Show how the elements of your idea would work. The third letter, D, stands for desire, and you arouse desire by showing how he or she will benefit. As a result of this, you will be able to do that. You will be able to accomplish this. You will be able to have this. Remember, the more you talk to people in terms of how they will benefit, the hotter is their desire, and the more eager they are to go to number 4, which is A, and that stands for action. Action means getting the person to do something as the result of your activities in communication. Now, here's an important point. Before you begin to sell your ideas to others or to attempt to persuade others, you must be clear in your own mind about what you want them to do. Where do you want this conversation to end up? Sometimes we say, start with the end in mind and say, if this communication is effective, what will the person do as a result of it? And then work back to the beginning and think what you have to do and say in order to get them to that mental position. Now, how do people buy a new idea from you? There's 4 stages that people go through, and it's very important that you go through each stage in sequence. Number 1 is what is called need recognition. When you present a new idea to a person, their first reaction is going to be, no, I'm not interested, don't want it, can't use it, can't afford it. People always resist change. So until they recognize that they need the benefits or the results that your idea would suggest, they have no interest at all. So the first thing you do is you need to point out the need that they have, which they probably weren't aware of. And need recognition comes first. The second part of buying an idea is what is called the evaluation of options. You see, people don't like ultimatums. They don't like to be given a single choice. They don't like to be taught, told, or talked down to. So when you convince them that they need to do something different than they're doing, their very first question is, okay, if I need to do it, what other ways are available to me? Are there faster ways, cheaper ways, easier ways, and so on? So a very effective way of talking and influencing is to show that here's the need, and here are basically the 3 ways, or however many ways there are, that you can satisfy this need. You can go this way, you can go that way, or you can do this. And your recommendation is that of the 3, this is probably the best, all things considered, for this person. That's much more persuasive than saying, here's a good idea for you. The third stage that people go through is what is called the resolution of concerns stage, where they ask questions. What about this, and what about that? Well, what if this happened? What if that happened? People are very concerned about a risk, taking a chance, being worse off afterwards, because they've had that experience in the past. So you must be ready to answer their questions and say, that's a good question, or that's a good concern. And actually, it's answered this way or that way. Start off by thinking through all the possible objections a person might have before you begin the process of communication, so you're ready. The fourth stage of buying is when the person commits to action. And this action commitment needs to be specific and time-bounded. If you want somebody to do something, always be specific about who's going to do it, what's going to be done, and then set a deadline. We say a decision without a deadline is not a decision at all. It's merely an endless discussion, and usually nothing ever gets done. The key to being a more effective communicator is for you to learn how to ask questions in the right way. Now, here's one of the great rules of effective communicating. It is that telling is not selling. Only asking is selling. Only asking is persuading. Anybody can tell. Anybody can go blah, blah, blah and tell. But the person who can take the point and put it in the form of a question, instead of saying, you could be much better off if you do this, that's easy. Or you could ask it, do you know how much better off you could be if you do this? You see, the person who asks questions has control in the conversation. The person who asks questions has control. If you ask it as a question, questions have an amazing power in this sense. Questions arrest and hold total attention. When you ask a person a question, 100% of their mind is held until they answer the question. For example, if I were to ask you a question, you will answer the question whether you try to resist or not. You're conditioned to answer a question. For example, how old are you? What color is your car? What's your telephone number? You see, if I ask you the questions, you automatically think of the answers. And you can't think of anything else until you've articulated the answer. So formulate everything you ask in the form of questions, and it rivets people's attention. And how do you do that? The key is to plan your questions carefully in advance. Don't go into a conversation like many people do and say, I can hardly wait to hear what I have to say. Organize your questions and think them through. All the best communicators plan in advance what they're going to say so their questions are organized and sequential. There are 4 kinds of questions that you can use to be influential. Number 1, the most powerful of all, are open-ended questions. Open-ended questions cannot be answered with a yes or a no. They start with the words who, what, why, when, where, how, and so on. Who is in charge of that? What are you doing in this area right now? When did this begin? Where will you be starting? How did you get started? Why are you doing it that way? None of these questions can be answered with yes or no, so they expand the answer and they encourage the person to talk and to expand. The second type of questions are closed-end questions. This is where you want to get a resolution or a decision. Closed-end questions start with verbs, such as are, is, can, do, will. Are you ready to go? Is this what you want? Can you begin today? Will you do this for me? Whenever you ask a question that begins with a verb, it demands a yes or a no answer and a conclusion. The third type of questions are preference questions. A preference question forces the person to choose. It starts with the word which. Which of these do you prefer, A or B? Which of these restaurants would you like to go to? Which of these would you like to purchase? Which forces the person to make a choice. And the person who asks questions has control. The fourth type of question, which is a very interesting question, is called a negative answer question. It's when a no means a yes to your suggestion. For example, you say, are you happy with the way things are going? If the person says no, it means, yes, I'm interested in what you're proposing as an alternative. The future belongs to the askers. The askers, not to those who passively accept whatever they're offered. However, we know that there are obstacles to asking. First of all, the fear of rejection and the fear of disapproval holds people back from asking for what they want. So the way you overcome that is very simple. You ask politely, ask expectantly, ask positively, ask warmly, ask in a friendly way, but be prepared to ask. Throughout your life, everything you do, ask for better prices, ask for better terms, ask for better conditions. For example, here's something that you do on a regular basis. When you go into a restaurant, be prepared to ask for a better table. I have found over the years that Brian's rules of restaurants, is what I call them, almost always work. And they're simply this, is that left to themselves, whoever seats you will seat you in the least desirable table. So when you get into the restaurant and they lead you to the least desirable table, which is the one in the main traffic, by the washroom, by the bathroom, by the kitchen, when you get there, what do? When you get there, you refuse to sit. And you ask for another table instead. You say, could I have that table, please? Or that table, or this table. Now, sometimes they'll argue with you, but you just be polite, be persistent and patient, and don't sit down. And almost inevitably, they'll move you to a better table, and the next person that comes in will be seated at that table by the kitchen. Use questions to open and to develop and to control a conversation. If you want to learn how to talk and be influential with others, you have to learn how to use questions well. For example, in conversation, there are 3 wonderful questions that you can use to literally control a conversation and to be perceived by others as a tremendous conversationalist. And here they are. Number 1, when you meet a new person, you ask the question, what sort of work do you do? Not what do you do, but what sort of work do you do? People love to talk about what they do all day long. And if you listen to what they do and the person slows down, then you ask this question, how did you get into that line of work anyway? People love to talk about the development of their careers and their lives and how they got to where they are. And they love it when you ask them and listen to them talk about their favorite subject and their favorite person. And when the conversation slows down, there's a very simple answer, or a very simple question you can ask, and it is, and then what did you do? And then what did you do causes the person to continue speaking. Wherever they stop, just say, and then what did you do? The rule is this, is keep the other person in the spotlight. Keep the other person as the center of attention. The more the other person feels like the center of attention, the more influential and persuasive you are. Keep asking questions. Use the word you over and over again. Make the other person feel important. And the way you make the other person feel important is you ask them questions about themselves and you listen to the answers and you ask them more questions. You point out to them how much better off they can be with your idea, and then you ask them questions to get their feedback. You don't try to overwhelm them, you try to gently nudge them and persuade them. Now, you can be a great communicator if you do 3 things. These are the 3 things that the average person neglects to do, but if you do them on a regular basis, like breathing in and breathing out until they become automatic, you will dramatically improve and increase your effect, your impact, and your personal power within your environment. Number 1, plan and think through your communications in advance. Don't rush in. Even if you're angry or upset or under a lot of pressure, people who are smart stop and think and analyze and prepare. And the more pressing the situation, the more important it is that you take a few minutes to think about how you're going to approach the subject. By the way, a very good question before you begin a communication with another person is to ask, is this a good time? Is this a good time as part of preparation? If a person says, no, I'm under pressure, I've got a phone call coming in, I have an emergency, good. Say, could we talk at a time that would be more convenient for you? Make sure that you have their total attention before you try to persuade. Second of all, focus on the other person first. Instead of getting all involved in yourself, tune in to his or her favorite radio station, WII-FM. Talk in terms of how it will help him or her to be more successful. And finally, number 3, ask questions to lead the conversation and control the dialogue. The person who asks questions has control. The person who asks questions is a better communicator. The person who asks questions is more persuasive. The person who asks questions is more influential. The person who asks questions gets the very best deals in life in terms of negotiating. To be a fabulous communicator, to influence others, to sell your ideas to others, ask good questions that lead the conversation, and then listen carefully to the answers.
Thank you for watching How to Talk, Secrets of the Great Communicators. If you would like information on other communication products from Business Advantage, please contact your Business Advantage representative.